Our Bay Area innovator today is Ken Yager. Ken has been a mountain climber for 53 years.
I first saw climbing when I lived in southern France. I immediately fell in love with it. In fact, the third time I went climbing, I don't know why they let me lead as a 12-year-old, but they did. They trusted me.
He climbed the famed El Capitan in Yosemite National Park for the first time at the age of 13, and his life has never been the same since.
The most scared I've been on one was a first ascent on the backside of Half Dome, south face of Half Dome. You could take huge falls on it, possibilities of your rope cutting. I had screws in my knee and a swollen knee, but I don't know, for some reason I felt like I had to do it.
He established a climbing museum in Mariposa and an exhibit in Yosemite. He has been a climbing guide for many years and played a key role in initiating a major yearly cleaning of the park. Now it's in 21st year.
We've cleaned up over 1 million pounds. Now we get 13,000 to 16,000 pounds a year. That's how much gets dropped every year. What I really like about it is that this energy that builds up, it's just humans trying to take care of a place they love, even though they're very different.
Today he will share more with us on his passion for climbing and the outdoors and how beneficial this is to individuals and society. This is Bay Area Innovators, and I'm your host, Steve Ispas. Ken, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Well, glad to have you here. So you've been hiking, or you've been climbing for 53 years. Please tell us how you got into climbing and what does it mean to you?
I first saw climbing when I lived in southern France. I went to 6th grade in a school in the town of Aix-en-Provence with my grandmother, and we did a boat ride by Cassis on the Mediterranean, and around the corner we saw climbing cliffs right over the ocean, these limestone cliffs, and there were people climbing on them, grown-ups, and they had ropes, and I had no idea you could do any of that stuff. I immediately fell in love with it, was enthralled, and wanted to try it. And in 1971, during the summer when I got back home from France, I had the opportunity to try climbing with the UC Davis professors and loved it right away. And from then on, I climbed every chance I could.
And you were 12 years old, is that right?
That's correct. I was 12 years old. And in fact, the third time I went climbing, I realized nobody that I was climbing with knew any more than I did. I was reading the books at that point, and so I started lead climbing. I don't know why they let me lead as a 12-year-old, but they did. They trusted me.
So I just want to make sure we clarify, climbing means when you use the ropes and you actually go up a steep cliff. It's not hiking or anything else like that. What does it mean to you? What is climbing mean to you?
Climbing, I don't know, for me, it gives me a lot. For one, it's very good exercise. It's like stretching too. It's kind of like yoga. It's good for the mind, especially if you're outdoor climbing. So you kind of get 3 benefits from it. One's peace and quiet and a little tranquility, and puts you in a really good headspace. You know, especially from the hustle and bustle of working or in the city. And then you've got this exercise, you know, just fantastic exercise that's kind of a combination of pushing and pulling and exercise and stretching. And then the third component would be problem solving. In other words, you got to be a bit of an engineer up there and figure out how to climb the thing. So you're kind of dealing with all 3 things simultaneously, which makes it really unique.
You mentioned to me before that when you're up there climbing, you can't really think of anything else. So that kind of helps you relax more, right?
Correct. I get a focus up there like I've never had before. Unfortunately, with cell phones, that's changing a little bit. Some of these climbing areas actually do have cell service now, but if you can leave the phone away, that's correct.
Now, when did you first climb the El Capitan, the famed climb in Yosemite National Park?
I first tried it in December of 1976, about 10 days after I moved up there, and failed miserably, almost could have died, and realized that I needed to do a little more work and some overnight climbs first, which I did. And then I climbed it 4 times later on that year in 1977 at 18 years old, which was pretty young, but even for these days, that's pretty young.
So what happened the first time you slipped?
Oh, no, I was, the first time we were just in over our heads. First of all, we pretty much started on the shortest day of the year, is in December, so you don't have much daylight. We had crappy headlamps back then, so they didn't work half the time. So once it got dark, you could be in real trouble. And other things happened. We were going slow. It was a little bit cold. And quite honestly, we probably would have been fine if we just kept going. I learned later that El Cap always starts out slow because you got all your food and water. Takes a while to get into your rhythm, but also you have the heaviest the bags are right at the beginnings, and generally on El Cap it starts out a little lower angle, and so the bags are dragging up. It's hard to pull them up, and as they get lighter and lighter you move faster, right? So I think if we just stuck with it we would have made it, but we kind of psyched ourselves out, decided to come down, and unfortunately our ropes were short, so it was very dangerous.
How long does it take for El Capitan, for an average climb?
Most people nowadays, depending on the route, the easier routes, they're doing them in 2 or 3 days now.
2 or 3 days?
Yeah. Back then, quite often it would take me 4 or 5. It depends. There's newer equipment that goes in a lot quicker and comes out a lot quicker now, and there's newer techniques and stuff. So people are tending to move a little faster than they did in the 70s when I did it.
So let me get that straight. So it takes 2 or 3 days just to climb up. So that means you spend the night on the rock, right?
Correct. Some of the routes, there's about 120 different ways to climb El Capitan. Some are extremely hard, and they might take you 2 weeks to climb them because of the difficulty. Most people do the easier routes, and quite often the easier routes, they follow, pretty obvious crack systems, and they also have little ledge systems. So some of the routes you can sleep on the ledges. As if you don't have those, other options would be to bring a portaledge, which is a hanging cot, and you just hang it off the wall, and it's actually quite comfortable, so you can sleep on those, but they're heavy, so there's trade-offs.
Now, I gotta ask you about the fear of heights. I mean, for me, if I'm at any altitude height and I look down, I'm gonna panic, right? Not to mention sleeping, right? So how do you relax enough to be able to sleep when you're in the middle of the rock?
Well, first of all, you should be afraid of heights. There's a good reason to, and I am too. But the way I deal with it is I understand the equipment. I understand how to use it. I've been climbing long enough, I can evaluate the rock quality. And so I feel pretty safe because I'm doing everything. It's like driving a car. The first time you try to do it, it's terrifying, right? It feels very dangerous, and it probably is. It's a lot like that, but as you get more and more experience, you probably become a better driver and feel a little safer, and to the point where you're comfortable with it. So climbing's kind of similar.
So when you sleep up there, are you able to lay down in any way, or pretty much
yeah, on this hanging
It's
cot.
like a hammock kind of.
Well, it's like a hammock, but even I used to sleep in hammocks, but they're uncomfortable. This is actually a cot that hangs flat, and it has a single suspension point. So you hang it on one piece of gear, and you can sleep like you're sleeping on a bed.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
And I sleep really well because I've been climbing all day. I'm tired. I've been hauling all that gear up, and I know I'm safe because I'm attached to the wall. I put the gear in myself, and I'm still tied in even when I'm sleeping. I know, because I had my portaledge spit me out one time, and I fell to the end of the rope. I mean, it was only a couple feet, but very uncomfortable.